I specifically stated publicly that I would not buy the Idris during Invictus this year. When I said those words, I couldn't wrap my mind around the idea of spending $1,500 on a make-believe ship in an incomplete game. At the time, I was convinced that the only way I would get my hands on an Idris was if they opened it up to be CCU'd to, meaning they'd have to remove the limited hull status, or if I decided to melt half my fleet and risk it all on the F5 game. Those were the only ways. That was until CIG launched the Idris experience. High above the city of Area 18, in the North I.O. Tower, sat an Idris, begging to be toured, in what I can only deem as an immensely clever marketing move by CIG. Because the moment I boarded what we thought at the time was a ship still far from being released, I was taken aback. I was in awe. Now, I've owned a Polaris for a while, and as impressive as that ship is, the Idris just takes it up several proverbial notches when it comes to scale and grandeur. During my first tour, the hull seemed to go on for forever. Each turn unveiled another surprise, and I couldn't help but get the feeling like I was living in a city, rather than just another ship. I felt life. In the walls of that Idris, I felt stories begging to be told, or in some cases, still needing to be written. From the seemingly endless hangar, to the incredibly well-done briefing room, all the way to the well-appointed medical bay, everything just seemed, to me at least, perfect. And more importantly, believable. Which was fine. I still wasn't necessarily convinced I needed one. But then, oh my friends, then I went to the bridge. And that's when the scale really hit me. The Idris wasn't just another ship. It was an icon. One of power and prestige. And a fine candidate to be the center of a small navy in this very flawed universe of ours. Looking across the bow of the mighty vessel, I began to wonder, what was it like to sit in that captain's chair? And that's when it hit me. What I'm looking for in this game isn't really a ship. I'm seeking an experience. I'm seeking an opportunity to create stories and memories amongst friends, acquaintances, and sometimes even enemies. And that moment there is when I knew I had to have one. So at 12 p.m. on launch day of Invictus, I swiped my card as fast as I could and luckily became a new owner during the first wave of release. Now that you know roughly my why or reason behind grabbing one of these, keep in mind during this review that a lot of it will be conducted through that lens. I won't be doing a full tour of the Idris in this video, as I'm sure you've probably already seen one. Better yet, you've probably already been in the Idris at this point. I also won't be doing a direct pound-for-pound stat comparison with other ships, cause the only other real competitor to the Idris is the Polaris. And well, they're really designed with two different intentions. And given the fact that this is a very large ship, this is going to be a bit of a longer video, so buckle in and get comfy. I'll be leaving chapter markers in the description and pinned comment though, so if you want to skip certain sections, those are the two places you can do so. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We're still very much a growing channel, and any likes, subscribes, and comments go a really long way in helping us continue to make great content like the video you're watching. And I'd like to quickly make a shout out to Raphael 10XD, who recently became the very first Forge Cord channel member. If you'd like to join her in being a channel member, the link to do so is in the description, and you'll automatically receive 5 times the entries during ship giveaways. Please keep in mind, 100% of my content will always be free to watch though, so it's completely optional. Now, welcome back everyone to Forge Core Gaming. I'm your host Phoenix, and this is my review of the Idris from Aegis Dynamics. Let's get into it. Now, this is a point of contention in the community. Is the Idris from Aegis Dynamics suitable for daily use? Is it practical? Should players even be able to use a ship like this as a daily driver, or should they be punished severely for trying to solo it? Let's talk about that. And bear in mind, I can only speak from personal experience after having used it for just over a week now. but I can honestly say this is the most impractical ship in the game for everyday use if your plan is to use it solo for things like bounties or bunker running. However, impractical does not mean incapable. Up to this point, I've used the Idris for just about everything, from sniping bounty targets from 5 kilometers away, to dropping in and taking out enemy bunkers, which, by the way, the Idris can vaporize enemy bunker turrets from outside of their range in as little as 4 seconds. Just set that Exodus beam weapon on the target turret pip and squeeze the trigger. It's super satisfying and makes entering bunkers a breeze. Now keep in mind, parking it is a bit of an issue, as you'd expect, as the Idris footprint is massive. It really isn't the easiest thing to land, nor is it quick to navigate. From pilot seat to hangar entry ramp, you're going to spend about a minute sprinting, and that's if you know the fastest path by heart and don't mess it up, because it is easy to get turned around in this thing. One of my org mates said it perfectly. The hallways in the ship are so long, it's hard to tell if you're running the length of it or the width, which can be a little bit of a pain getting used to, even when compared to ships like the Polaris, whose hallways are significantly shorter despite it being one of the closest sized competitors currently in the game. But the use cases for the Idris aren't limitless. Sure, on paper, it could blast just about anything out of the sky in short order with its main weapons, and its PDC systems work wonders against small enemy craft. But there are dozens of ships that are too large for the PDC systems to target, while still being vastly more maneuverable than the Idris, meaning a solo Idris captain just won't be able to get guns on target. And if you're thinking of using its 1,374 SCUs of cargo to start doing some big money making cargo contracts, you should probably think again, as most cargo loops make you go into places like space stations, places where the Idris, like other capital-sized ships, can't get a hangar, and that limitation precludes the Idris from doing drop-offs or pickups there. So you would be bound to doing planet-side pickups and drop-offs, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it just limits your available choices. It's also worth pointing out that the Idris goes absolutely nowhere fast, and that's by design. CIG, as time goes by, is becoming more and more committed to making capital ships feel like capital ships. They want them to feel like the lumbering giants that they are. Everything else around them that isn't a capital size does and should make you feel like you're standing still. Because even while under boost, the pitch, yaw, and roll rate of the ship are incredibly slow at 8, 8, and 14 degrees per second respectively, which is appropriate because this ship, again, is massive. But that doesn't mean there aren't any redeeming factors that may make it viable for everyday use, such as the fact that you're probably not going to have to repair often. With 2 capital-sized shields, the Idris carries over 2 million shield HP in a quadrant configuration. And even if you manage to get past that, you still have 15.5 million hull HP to deal with. Now I know, hull HP isn't a bubble, it's divided up into sections, and right now the hangar doors on the Idris are made of drywall. But that's being patched in the upcoming 4.2 release. On top of that, you have 120 SCUs of quantum fuel, which for those of you that don't know, is a lot. I've been using the Idris daily since its launch, and pretty much exclusively at that, and I haven't had to fuel up once. Realistically, you're more likely to have to reclaim your ship due to a bug than you are to have to refuel it. At least that's been the case for me. I don't think it's any secret that the Idris is purpose-built for war, but is it all it's cracked up to be? I guess that depends on your perspective. Now let me be clear on this, the Idris slaps. Objectively, this ship has higher sustained damage than anything else in the verse. I'm not counting torpedoes here, so before you crucify me, just chill. It's also the tankiest ship in the verse as of yet, meaning on paper, yeah, it should be second to none when it comes to combat. But that isn't necessarily always the case. Within 12 hours of its launch, I told my org members straight up, I think the Polaris beats this in a PvP scenario. As it turns out, I was right. Several other YouTubers have published videos showcasing how a properly positioned Polaris can dummy fire torps and completely disable an Idris in 1 or 2 shots, which is perfect. The Polaris is the anti-capital ship. Its sole purpose is to kill other really large ships. Now, some of the Idris numbers are getting buffed in a few weeks, but even then, the Polaris has the advantage of maneuverability. And if we take 2 people on an Idris versus 2 people on a Polaris, Smart money bets on the Polaris every single time, provided pilot skill is equivalent. Now, does that make the Idris less than the Polaris, though? Not at all. It just has a different set of strengths and weaknesses. Every ship should have a counter, and the Idris does. So, well done, CIG. But the Idris is better suited for other things that the Polaris doesn't exactly excel at. Take, for instance, fighter screening. The Idris' 12 gunner positions make it a much better area denial ship against medium to small craft. Pair that with its 11 PDC systems, and it is an absolute fiend on the battlefield. To top that off, if the pilot, amidst the chaos of battle, gets their main gun locked onto an enemy ship, then it's pretty much lights out in pretty short order, provided that ship isn't a capital. And realistically, there really isn't any notable performance drop-off when you switch targets up to large and sub-capital sized ships. If anything, those are just as easy due to the fact that they're larger, slower targets. In all honesty, after a week of exclusively the Idris, I have zero complaints about its performance on the battlefield, and that's especially true when it's crewed up. Now, I still haven't filled all 12 gunner seats at the same time on my ship, but even without those 4 dual-size 4 fighter screening turrets, this thing performs the way you'd expect it to, like an absolute beast. Now let's discuss how I feel about the Idris being incorporated into org gameplay. I think it goes without saying that, for the time being, the Idris is the perfect candidate to be used as an org flagship. It feels like a small city where every person has a job to do. And though being a gunner isn't the most thrilling endeavor for everyone, there are plenty of people out there that love doing it. Moreover, some people just want to be a part of and work alongside a group. And before you fight me on this, Space Tomato conducted a survey recently and found that up to 50% of the player base often prefer not to pilot their own ship. They just want to multi-crew on other people's ships, which is a good thing. This game needs that in the community. Because as the saying goes, too many chefs spoil the soup. And big empty ships make the Star Citizen universe feel dead. But I digress. Though a week-long trial period isn't really grounds for concrete conclusions, what I've seen so far is promising. People in my org, at least, want to be aboard the Idris. Even if we're just hanging out, not doing much of anything. There is a demographic of people who just want a relaxing space game aboard a giant ship. More specifically, one that looks and feels like a giant ship. And for my org members that don't want to be gunners, they bring their fighters inside the massive hangar bay. And though the Idris isn't specifically a carrier, rather a frigate with carrier functions, it can carry a significant number of small ships, well beyond the official landing pad suggestions, which is just 3. Or you can carry mining vehicles for org mining operations. Think about how valuable that could be now that you can swap out mining bags and refine straight from station inventory. Or hold some small salvage ships. With the cargo grid being directly beside the landing pads, I'd imagine a well-oiled operation could manage to bring in a lot of RMC in a relatively short period of time, and in the future, when RMC is needed in large quantities for things like base building, the Idris could serve as a well-protected self-escort ship for salvage expeditions. Additionally, and I don't think this gets addressed often, the Idris is perfect for role-playing gameplay. Though that's not necessarily my cup of tea, I've had several org mates state that they would really enjoy some milsim or light RP gameplay. And additions to the Idris like the gym, the mess hall, the incredibly detailed crew quarters, and that really cool briefing room all make for some pretty awesome backdrops for RP scenarios. Not to mention, RP roles like an ATC controller, which is a role some of my org members fight over for some reason. Overall, this ship offers options. Options where players from all walks of life, with different interests, can intersect and interact with one another. So, top marks to CIG for breathing some life into the Idris in that regard. Now, it's not all good news for the Idris. Not now, and not in the future, because the game is changing on a near constant basis. Recently, developers and CIG officials have stated that capital ship gameplay as we know it isn't going to stay the way it currently is. It just can't. In the future, operating a cap ship will come with a really high cost. And well, That's appropriate, because currently, in a game anchored to the idea of immersion, it's just a little too easy to hop into one of these and go without any forethought of the risks. As it stands, the worst case scenario is you lose an hour of prep time and about $150K in Idris claiming fees. As an owner, I'm aware of how easy we have it right now, and I can only imagine what the penalties of bringing these out will be in the future. Not to mention, engineering, when implemented, will make this an absolute nightmare for solo players. Even now, players have reported that fuses can periodically blow out, causing the ship to be rendered useless, which, again, this is how it should be. Even still, I'm on board for it. Those kinds of changes are needed for the game. But future changes aside, as it stands, using the Idris isn't exactly convenient. Let me reiterate a point I made earlier. Not much can be done quickly while using this ship. Landing takes time. Takeoff takes time. Loading your ship takes time. Gathering your crew takes time. Heck, even exiting the ship takes time. It's cumbersome. And goodness forbid you forget something from your inventory terminal and you make it all the way to the bridge before you realize. You would be forgiven if you just decided not to bring it at all. Of course, that's only worsened by the fact that there's only one external ground entrance in this iteration of the Idris. And anytime you call it up from the ASOP terminal, it's almost guaranteed that you'll be on the wrong end of the thing. It's a 50-50 chance, and I've yet to have the ship spawn with the ramp actually facing me. And then we get to content, or the lack thereof. If we got really honest with ourselves, there really isn't much of a need to use the Idris right now. It's overkill for just about everything. My org and I set out in our Idris crewed with only 8 of us, and we took down the hunt for the Polaris mission. Bear in mind, it took us 20 minutes to kill the dang thing, but we were still able to do it, and we had no help as we were, oddly enough, the only people at the mission. So the most difficult PvE mission in the verse was taken down by a sub-optimal Idris. Keep in mind, that's no jab at anyone or anything, that's just the state of the game right now being somewhere in between a tech demo and an actual game. It's my suspicion, however, that all that will change when we get more completed overarching gameplay loops such as base building plus the implementation of org and player reputation systems. When those two things come into the game, there will be purpose behind coordination. Large multi-crew ships will make sense when real progress is tied to orgs working together. It's my hope, of course, that CIG takes it a few steps further than that with universe-wide, story-driven, dynamic events that trigger instanced fleet battles that anyone can join in on. And if people don't band together and defeat certain threats, then penalties will ripple through the universe in a variety of ways, sorta along the lines Helldivers 2 does things, but with a bit more breadth and scope commensurate with the game. So as it stands, the only purpose for the Idris right now is to facilitate testing ships this size and maybe satiate the player base who have been waiting on this for years. But that's just my take. I have to admit, when I pushed that complete purchase button during the first minute of Invictus, I wasn't convinced I made the right choice. In fact, I felt stupid for having spent $1,500 on a single item in a video game. I felt duped, and I eyeballed that 30-day refund policy with some serious consideration. I thought to myself, this will fade, the novelty of it will disappear really quickly. But after a full week of use, I've come to find something different. You see, I didn't buy a ship. I bought an idea. I paid for the development of a game that I want to see succeed. I cast a vote for its continued evolution. Of equal importance, I bought a gathering place for my org. One where we can craft stories together, where we can share ideas with one another, talk about what we want to do in the game, and then set out and do it as a team. The Idris isn't real, but the experiences we have and the people we meet along the way, they are. And that's enough for me to say, yeah, I think it's worth the $1,500. If you've made it this far in the video, I'd like to gently remind you to hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Also, please consider subscribing as a free way to show your support for what Forge Core is building. As always, thank you all very much for watching. Fly safe out there, and I'll see you in the verse.